an Atlanta Radio Theater Company dramatic production.
We'll do a quick sound check before we start the interview. Are you nervous, Professor Dyer?
I have spoken on the radio before, Miss Ashton. A good many times, in fact.
Not for the last 15 years, though.
No, not for the last 15 years.
Now, we're going to transcribe the interview for later broadcast. You don't have to worry about any of that. It's just like making a live broadcast. Are you ready, Charlie?
We'll need a sound check.
This is Alice Ashton of WCTH, the Voice of New England. How's that?
Fine. Say something, Doc.
What do you want me to say?
Just anything. He needs to make sure the mics are adjusted.
This is Howard Dyer, Professor Emeritus of Geology at Miskatonic University of Arkham, Massachusetts.
Okay, that's fine.
This is much more convenient than transcribing the disc.
Yes, I imagine so.
Levels are good, little echo in here, but that won't hurt anything. I can play with it before we go on the air anyway. Okay. Ready anytime you are, Miss Ashton.
All right. Are you comfortable, Professor?
Yes, I suppose so.
Rolling, Charlie?
Ready, and...
Alice Ashton interviewing Professor Howard Dyer at his home in Arkham, Massachusetts, January 5th, 1946. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your reporter, Alice Ashton, broadcasting from the home of Professor Howard Dyer in Arkham, Massachusetts. Welcome to New England News, Dr. Dyer.
Thank you, Miss Ashton. I am grateful for the opportunity to speak.
As our listeners will remember, you were a celebrity before the war. In fact, some people feel you were as famous as Admiral Byrd.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, I'm sure your colleagues at Miskatonic University think of you as a celebrity. You led the famous Dyer expedition of 1930 to Antarctica.
Yes. I was responsible for that disaster.
Perhaps our younger listeners need to be reminded that several of your exploration team unfortunately died on that expedition.
Yes, far too many. And if the planned renewal of Antarctic exploration goes forward, many more will die. Perhaps everyone.
Everyone on the projected Byrd expedition, you mean?
Everyone on Earth. The Miskatonic expedition of 15 years ago was the first to reach the mountains, the mountains of madness, poor young Danforth called them. And there we found such terror that as head of the project I chose to keep silence. But now that the war is over and expeditions are planned once again, I must speak. We sailed from Boston Harbor on September 2nd, 1930. Taking a leisurely course down the coast and through the Panama Canal. The expedition team commanders included Professors Pabody and Lake of the Miskatonic Biology Department, Atwood of the Physics Department, and as leader of the expedition, myself, representing geology. We had, besides, 16 assistants and mechanics, 4 Dornier airplanes, and the materials and equipment for 2 entire seasons of Antarctic exploration. Among the graduate students who accompanied us was poor Stephen Danforth, my chief assistant and pilot. On November 7th, Danforth and I were at the Rayo as our ship passed Franklin Island.
Bleak, isn't it, Dr. Dyer?
Bleak and forbidding, Danforth, and a little frightening.
Like the plateau of Leng.
I beg your pardon?
Cold wastes are places of terror, and none more so than that dread upland plateau of Leng, the frozen place where the old ones walk. That's from the Necronomicon.
Oh, yes. I've never read that.
Strange how the old myth cycles all see the frozen poles as places of terror. You know, Edgar Allan Poe's The Narrative of A. Gordon Pym reaches its terrible climax at the South Pole. And
Danforth, if you would pay more attention to your geology texts and less to works of popular fiction, you would be a better student. though perhaps not as interesting.
Stephen Danforth. Isn't he the one who...
Yes, Miss Ashton, permanently and completely. And I blame myself.
And when did it happen?
Not right away. We established our base camp on the Great Ross Ice Barrier on November the 9th. I need not repeat what the newspapers at the time reported. Our ascent of Mount Erebus, our successful mineral borings, our tests of Peabody's new ice-melting apparatus. Our progress was remarkable through the exploration flight of January the 6th, 1931, when Lake, Peabody, Daniels, 6 of the students, and myself flew directly over the South Pole in 2 of the planes. Lake's plane was blown off course on the return leg, and that was the occasion we glimpsed the mysterious uncharted mountain range. From then on, the mountains were his obsession and his doom. Previously, Lake had discovered incredibly ancient fossils in the high, dry valleys near Mount Erebus. Now he was afire to explore this great unknown mountain range.
Dyer, we must mount a sub-expedition to the mountains. Already we've discovered the first Precambrian fossils ever recovered. Who knows what we may find if we locate fossiliferous strata? Gedney agrees with me.
Yes, in fact, I do. If you'll give us the planes...
Wait, gentlemen. We have already set our agenda for exploration, and I cannot...
We set our schedule before discovering the fossils.
But we'll lose time, and it'll mean splitting the party. Who would go on the southwestern expedition, Lake?
By myself, of course, and Gedney. Carroll is chief pirate, Moulton, Atwood, some of the students, say a dozen men in all.
A dozen? You'll leave us with only 8 men at the base station?
But, Dr. Dyer, your major exploration won't begin until February, and by then we should...
Please, Gedney. Lake, I couldn't possibly allow you to take all 4 planes. What if a storm damaged them all? How would you get back?
That's hardly likely. Besides, they're the dog sleds. We could use all 4 planes in rotation to establish a base camp, then send 2 back to you.
I allowed myself to be persuaded. In the end, a dozen of our men left on the Lake expedition. Within a week, Lake had established a camp near the foothills of the Great Unknown Range. He sent 2 of the aircraft back to us at the main base, and he set out on his explorations. At about 4 p.m., January the 18th, the wireless operator came to me in a state of high excitement. Lake was reporting in, and what he had to say was indeed most extraordinary.
We've completed an airplane survey of the higher reaches. Around 20,000 feet, the mountains are almost free of snow and ice, and the rock surfaces appear to be of Jurassic and Comanchean limestones with intrusions of Triassic and Permian slates. We are establishing a drilling camp on an outcrop of sandstone.
All day the reports continued. The sandstone gave way to Comanchean limestone, and then, to the surprise of all...
Lake reporting. A few minutes ago, Gedney came in to tell me the drilling apparatus has broken through into a cave, and the bit has come up with bits of cephalopods, corals, sporophora, fossils in great abundance. We are preparing to blast an opening that will allow us to descend into the cave.
And they did so. It became obvious that the opening was no cave, but in fact a tunnel, extending indefinitely in both directions. Stalactites and stalagmites sprouted abundantly, but the most important find was the incredible profusion of bones, washed down from unknown jungles of Mesozoic tree ferns and fungi, forest of tertiary cycads, fan palms, and primitive angiosperms. The bones comprised a cross-section of millions of years of life. There were shark teeth and dinosaur vertebrae, pterodactyl wing bones, remains of primitive mammals. There was nothing like it in the history of paleontology. And then came the discovery of one fossil that no one could explain.